now Lord Christopher Monckton, because he is a member of the House of Lords, went in and demanded the latest treaty. This is breaking news. It has everything that was in the previous one and worse. You're going to hear this now breaking. We have the Danish text leaked of the architecture of this global government, how private corporate interest, IMF, World Bank, will run the system, not even the UN. So just that's got the third world now reeling, threatening to back out. The Saudis are calling for investigations. So much is happening. I'm going to attempt to go over all of this in the next 51 minutes with Lord Christopher Monckton, again, graciously joining us. So I'm going to try to just sit back, sir, and let you chronicle. You're there at Copenhagen. But also the good news, UN climate chief does say hacked emails are damaging. But as you said, they're like the cat caught with a canary in its mouth, going on about its business like it's no big deal.
They're trying very, very hard to pretend that climategate didn't happen. People who've come to the conference don't really know that it happened because most of the mainstream media have still really not said what's in these emails. And what is happening is that the mainstream media have done themselves terrible damage by signing up to this climate nonsense and then by surlily refusing to admit that climategate was happening, admit how serious it was, and simply inform their readers of what was actually in these emails. Admissions that while they're telling us, as the Met Office did just today, that today is the warmest decade since records began 150 years ago, privately what they're saying in the emails, the climategate emails, is, hey, look, we've got a temperature which in fact has been falling, and we can't explain why, and it's a travesty that we can't explain why. So they're saying one thing to us publicly to maintain the scare, making them rich, and that's what's called fraud. It's criminal fraud. And on the other hand, they're saying privately, oh dear, we can't account for the fact there's been no warming for the last 15 years. I mean, it's very serious, this disconnect between what they're saying among themselves privately and what they're admitting to us publicly.
Absolutely. Talking about criminal investigations, Lord Monckton, we have Senator Inhofe calling for it, the Saudis calling for investigations, and the Saudis have pointed out the United Nations, the progenitor of this fraud, they can't run the investigation.
No, they can't, because the United Nations is thoroughly compromised in all this, because the climate panel that it created via the United Nations Environment Programme and the World Health Organization, namely this Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which has produced 4 major reports on the climate, those 4 major reports are now all under a cloud, because all the major contributors to those reports, the lead authors, indeed the lead author of the entire science report of 2007, are part of these emails, part of this conspiracy to conceal, manipulate, tamper with, invent, make up, and eventually destroy data when it was requested by third-party scientists who wanted to check whether the various extraordinary claims they were making could possibly be true. It's a very, very serious matter, and there's no way the UN can be allowed to do this. I think this has got to go to district attorneys in the United States, and it's got to go to the police and the Crown Prosecution Service in the United Kingdom. It's already gone to the Information Commissioner because there are plain admissions in emails there over the years that they have been planning to avoid disclosing information to other scientists, which is contrary to the scientific method, as well as contrary to UK freedom of information law. But the final seal on that freedom of information thing is the email in which one of the people concerned wrote to all the others and said, you must destroy all your emails relating to our participation in the 4th assessment report of the United Nations Climate Panel in 2007, because we're being asked for it by another scientist under the Freedom of Information Act, so you must destroy it. That email clearly constitutes a serious criminal offence for which the highest possible level of financial penalty is allowed for by the Freedom of Information Act 2000. And the person who wrote that email, whom I won't name on the air because it's not fair to him, he is now going to face criminal charges. He is, I think, going to be indicted, convicted, and he won't be imprisoned because we don't imprison people yet for these offences. I think the law's going to have to change in the light of this. But he will certainly be subjected, as will his institution, to a very large financial penalty indeed, and quite rightly so.
Well, you're a member of the House of Lords, the upper chamber of your parliament, for those that don't know, Lord Christopher Monckton. Are you saying that the inside information that you're getting from government is that he will be prosecuted?
No, because the government would be most improper if it were to involve itself anyway in whether or not to prosecute somebody. That is a function entirely of the Director of Public Prosecutions, who is an official who has to be independent of government. And also, I myself, although a member of the House of Lords, do not have the right to sit or vote. That was taken away.
No, I understand, but I'm saying you're saying you believe he will be charged, or you're
I think it is certain that he will be charged. I myself, together with Professor Fred Singer, who founded the U.S. Satellite Weather Service many years ago, have written an official complaint to the Information Commissioner asking him to look into this, as has one of the people who had made a Freedom of Information request. Now, the person who made that information request has been answered. We have not yet been answered. And if I don't get an answer in the next few days, and as soon as I get back from this Copenhagen conference, I will be arranging for questions to be put down in the House of Lords about why the Information Commissioner isn't doing his job and replying to his correspondence.
So you're going to demand justice, and you and others have filed formal complaints, and we have them red-handed talking to the government, colluding to keep the public from getting information that should be public. I mean, that certainly is a conspiracy to engage in a cover-up.
It's worse than that. It's also against every rule of science, because the only way science can work is if people who publish results on which the largest tax increase and the largest abandonment of freedom ever conceived is about to be negotiated here at Copenhagen, they have not been sharing their results and their computer programs and their data with other scientists so that those other scientists can check them. All of this has been done behind closed doors so that they could get away with what turns out to be not just an information offense, but also a very serious scientific and financial criminal fraud for which a very long sentence in prison is the appropriate remedy. And what I have had is requests from two immensely senior professors, one in the United States and one in Canada, that I should draft for them complaints to the British police, because they don't know how we do it here. They want me to just do that for them. They will make sure that I've got all the facts correct, and they've both sent me a large amount of information about the facts in their case, because they're named in these emails in the most uncomplimentary way, and it's very clear that a plot to devalue their scientific research by unfair and foul and dishonest means had been engaged in by the conspirators who have been talking to each other in these emails. So I will be going to see the police superintendent in the East Anglia Constabulary, who is heading up the investigation into who the whistleblower is and whether he should be prosecuted. And I can tell you from now he won't be prosecuted, because we have legislation which allows whistleblowers to bring criminal offences to the attention of the public in this way without suffering any penalty themselves. So the whistleblower will not be prosecuted. However, I will be saying to the police officer that there is clear and systematic evidence of deliberate, wide-scale fraud right across the meteorological community, in NASA, in NOAA, in the University of East Anglia, in Penn State University, in universities and institutions of learning right across the world, where a small coterie of malevolent scientists, and they come across as very nasty people in the way they write about everybody else that disagrees with them. They're very nasty people, they're highly politically motivated, and they're very bad and incompetent scientists, and also very vicious to anyone who dares to disagree. And this unpleasantness is the first thing that strikes anyone who reads these emails. But of course, unfortunately, here at Copenhagen, most of the people basically can't read at all, as far as I can see. And so the idea that they would read these emails is unthinkable. Of course,
well, yes, sir. The propaganda looks like it's the propaganda looks like it's directed at 3-year-olds. Pictures of children saying, "Please don't let me drown." But isn't it important to get these charges rolling while Copenhagen's going on, because that will really blow up in the establishment's face, and that's why they're panicking, because they know they've been engaging in all this crime. Earlier last week, I'm sure you're aware of this, you're always a few steps ahead of us or more, or several leagues ahead of us. It's now coming out that the UN had documents, AP and Fox reported it, where they were recruiting and directing scientists in this fraud and in this artificial consensus from behind the scenes. So we have the United Nations directly in there as really the king rat orchestrating this.
Oh, well, of course, there's been a lot of evidence of this. One of the people who is very prominently named in the emails, indeed one of the people exchanging these emails, is the person who the UN called in to rewrite the 1995 second major climate assessment report. They do these every 5 years, the UN. Really big reports. So this is the sort of what the bedwetters base their case on. Say, well, the UN says this. Now, the UN said in its 1995 report, and this was what the scientists, around 1,000 of them, had signed off on. What they said was, there is no detectable human influence on global temperature. We can't find any. We don't know when we will find one. We're not...